and welcome back to Salmon's Pizzeria for another episode of the SPFL Roundup, the top division roundup. Today has been a bit of a mad one, a few games and a few lineup changes as well for ourselves. So we are honoured to be joined by the one and only Gogsy. Gogsy, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Motherwell are in the top 6, so I'm in a very good mood.
Yep, of course. And late but here is Jenna, our other Motherwell fan. Jenna, how are you?
I'm not bad. Yourselves?
Yes, I'm. Well, we'll get to that. And I'm joined. I'm sure he doesn't want to be here, but I am joined by the brilliant Davey of Not Another Rangers podcast. Davey, how are you?
I've had a weekend, if I'm being honest, Alex. It's an interesting weekend that I got the invite for the pizzeria to come over. So certainly a few things to get into. However, I'm here to front it and take it from all angles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you'll have a few choice words to say, but we will start in Perth with St Johnstone versus Motherwell. It ends up being a good result for our two Motherwell fans there. A couple of things to talk about. I mean, first of all, there was an early penalty shout for Motherwell. I think, was it McGinn that was fouled by Essel, or maybe not fouled? Did you catch that game, Jenna? And how do you feel your team played?
I caught the highlights. Didn't end up actually getting a chance to watch the game yesterday, but to be honest, I didn't think it was a penalty. There wasn't much in it for me. I mean, if it's your team, you shout for it, obviously. But to be honest, if we did get awarded it, we would have been more than lucky. But it should never have been a penalty. I'm glad it wasn't, to be honest, as it wouldn't have been right. We did play really well from what I've seen on Twitter as well. It seems as though Steve McDonald had another really good game. I'm all about that propaganda. So NHS talk about him. Please allow me to do it. But I think we are starting to get really strong. I'm not trying to get my hopes up too well, because we did this last season. Great run at the start and then dramatically fell off at Christmas. So I'm trying not to get too hopeful, but things definitely have started to turn around at last. Yeah,
and Gogsy, a new contract for Kettlewell, and it's backed up by a decent result of the weekend. So how are you feeling on that one? Because I know there was a kind of here nor there at the start of the season. People weren't 100% on him, but he's definitely had some good results over his time, and he's adding to them this year.
No, definitely. When you look at the stats in terms of what you expect a manager to do, like, he has done not bad. Like, when you compare it to some other managers that we've had, I mean, there was Graham Alexander. Somehow in the 21-22 season, I don't think we had a single League One from like the January until like the April of the main. Somehow we still got Europe. And you think of it like that, results don't always look as bad as they are, or they might actually look better than what they are as well. So I think it's a hard one. Like, lately he has changed formations. He started playing wingers, which before he just seemed to refuse to do. He's finally realising that he can't be so stubborn sometimes, because that's what was holding us back. So I'm hoping with this kind of progressive approach to things, we can actually start seeing some proper results and maybe challenge for top 6.
Yeah, of course. And Gogsy, what about yourself? Are you happy with the news that Kettlewell's got a new contract?
Well, the thing is, it's a results business, and okay, we may not be playing the greatest football, but last couple of weeks we've been very good. I mean, 2 deserved victories against St Johnstone and Hearts, and I'm quite happy by that. And if the board's going to back Kettlewell, then by all means, go for it.
Absolutely, yeah, and we'll just kind of go back to the action then. Dan Casey gets the opener from a set piece. Gogsy, he's pretty good at getting his head in the end of things. How important has he been, both defensively and, of course, as we see in this game, not once but twice, offensively as well?
Well, yeah, ever since he came in, I mean, he was part of the Kettlewell revolution. When Kettlewell first came in, he was signed in as a free transfer along with Callum Butcher, and he's gone from strength to strength. Like when we first signed him, he was part of the core defence that actually got us into that good run, just narrowly missing out in top 6. And then last season again, he was a stalwart at the back, and he's only going to get better.
And Jenna, somebody who was probably not too well loved in the end in Liam Kelly, had to be replaced, and Oxborough coming in has done quite well. I mean, he was called upon a few times yesterday. I think he made 4 saves in total, but a couple which were pretty decent. Are you happy with the Motherwell goalkeeper situation? Because we talked about it just after the League Cup, and you weren't entirely sure who was number one.
Yeah, at the time it was just kind of hard to tell because, again, we have been that used to Liam Kelly. Oxford Gogs will probably know better than me, but I think last season he had like 1 or 2 appearances for us. And again, it was like League Cup group stages. So we hadn't really had the chance to see what he was capable of. Same when we signed the young guy, is it Hedgie? Do you pronounce it as?
Yeah.
Like, we signed him on loan from our team down. Again, barely
West
went
Ham.
with the boys. It was the West Ham. I was going to say Aston Villa, but I mean West Ham. I'm murder for it. But we signed him. It was just trying to see, well, if we were getting a loan signing from a Premier League team, you'd think, oh, surely that would be your number one choice. You'd think, obviously, it's not turned out that way for us. I've been really impressed by him, and to be honest, knowing what we know now, I don't know how we didn't get a game from us last season. See the last end, maybe last 6 or 7 games. See if we had him in, I can guarantee our results would have been different.
Okay, and Davey, you've got no dog in this fight, but St Johnstone then go and equalise through Impioka. Is it Kimpioka? Yeah, and an absolute disaster, really, from the Motherwell defence. They looked a little bit all over the place, but St Johnstone, albeit not great results, were kind of everyone's favourites to go down. Do you think they've started stronger than you would have expected?
I think the fixtures have been fairly kind to them so far. I think there's tougher tests that await for St Johnstone. The thing with Craig Levein is how he shapes up his teams. They're very resolute and robust defensively. You won't see them progressing into attacking areas, but they do have outballs with Kimpioka. And I think the thing that sort of counteracted that yesterday was that Motherwell defend that little bit deeper because there's not that sort of natural pace. When you play 3 at the back, you have to be sort of careful, where you shape up in terms of the opposition. So I don't think they found the joy to get in behind Motherwell as they have. Perhaps even if you look back to the League Cup game against Rangers, they had opportunities in that fixture because they were able to stretch Rangers in the bigger pitch. I think Motherwell managed the distances between defence and midfield really well and allowed them very few chances. I do want to praise I think it was Ian Snedden who was the referee that was referred to VAR. I know you touched on it, but for him to see that in real time and then be asked to look at the monitor, 9 times out of 10, the onus is on the referee to perhaps change his decision. But you've seen the way that he came away from that. He looked at that as a bit of a nonsense call, going to the monitor for that. He wasn't convinced. And I think with Willie Collum, taking over the head of refereeing, you're seeing, referees progress and maybe get more games in the top flight than they did last season. And perhaps Ian Snedden's going to be one of those guys. So I think it was refreshing to see a referee be his own man in that situation and not be influenced by the monitor. And he was resolute in the fact that his original decision was correct. And I think that's good for the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely good to see the referees backing themselves. And I mean, it's happened quite a few times. I don't think there was too many controversial calls, especially not on Saturday. Anyways, we a winner then right at the death, Gogsy. Another set piece for Motherwell, another header from Dan Casey, but it's obviously knocked in then at the back post by, I'm going to pronounce this wrong maybe, but is it Abiye?
Yeah, Moses Abiye.
Bye. Okay, and
Yes.
yeah, I mean he's got a couple of winners now. He got the one against Kilmarnock in the League Cup, and now this one. How good's he been since he was brought in on the free transfer earlier this year?
He's been fantastic. I mean, the 3 goals he scored in competitive football have been monumental in terms of importance. Like the goal at Dundee after being 2-0 down to win 3-2 in the last minute was fantastic, and also, of course, Kilmarnock in extra time, and then late again against St Johnstone. Like, he's a good impact sub, and hopefully he'll get a start soon because I think he deserves one after the last couple of weeks he's had. But yeah, really enjoy having him. He also scored from the halfway line against FC Twente in pre-season.
Yeah, and then kind of last thing to touch on from the actual football perspective in Perth was Jack Sanders forgetting that he has swapped out his Kilmarnock jersey this season as he picked up a red. I mean, the second yellow, Jenna, there's just no need.
No, definitely. Like, it was a bit of a dodgy tackle, to be honest. You'd think a player like him would know better, but it's just one of those things. He's went in for it. He's probably thought to himself, "Oh, I can maybe chance it." To be honest, stupid chance to take. Even I can't speak today, but it's just one of those things. Really, if you're the player, you need to take it on the chin, take the ban, and you just move on.
Absolutely. Gogs, yeah, we'll go back to you. One last thing on this, which was plastered in our group chat a little bit on this game, that when that goal goes in, the Motherwell TV commentator is obviously having a great time, and somebody in the St. Johnstone crowd is not so much. I mean, how I know it's not great, but it is also a great clip to look back on. But how important and how stupid and how special are moments like that in Scottish football? Because you just don't get them anywhere else.
I think that's what makes Scottish football so great. It's just how funny it is, and as you said, it doesn't happen anywhere else. It's only in Scotland that you get banter moments like that. So yeah, get it up, St. Joe's.
And in case anyone didn't catch that, there was a St. Johnstone fan who told the Motherwell commentator where he would put his microphone. So yeah, it was strong words after that defeat late on. We will switch from Perth then over to Dundee, unbeaten Dundee so far, very strong season, and although unbeaten, another draw. 3 draws now for them, a 2-2 draw against St Mirren, and it was a strong start for the away side. They get the opener. Mandron puts them ahead. Davey, have you been impressed with St Mirren so far? Because it's been a little bit difficult for them, especially with the European games.
Well, I think it's hard to tell at the moment because of the European fixtures. I think you'll see them run up ahead of steam after the international break. But in this game, what caught my eye was the garish goalie strip from the Dundee goalkeeper, the white shirt and the white shorts with the purple socks. Very strange. But I think they got joy, St Mirren, through Portales. His defensive performance, I think, was questionable. He's very susceptible to the ball over the top. I know he's not the biggest physical player that Dundee have in their team, but when he plays centre of defence, you get real joy with the ball over the top. And I think it was Olasanya for the first goal. Quick ball over the top, held him off. It was easily shrugged off. And I think he was also at fault for the second goal as well. And whilst he's good on the ball and he does have a sort of good goal record for Dundee, you'll see him pop up from set pieces and he's neat and tidy on the ball. But defensively, I think there's massive question marks on him, and perhaps that might be an issue that Tony Docherty addresses. I think Luke McCown's going to be a massive miss to them, but they do have really tidy footballers going forward. They're easy on the eye, they're quick in transition, and I think it will be another successful season for them.
Yeah, and we'll just stick with that point that you make there, and I'll go to you, Jenna. Luke McCowan is obviously going to be a big miss for Dundee, but he makes probably his dream move. And he is signed for Celtic. I mean, the smile on his face when he walked out for the first time on transfer deadline day said it all, didn't it?
No, definitely. It's if you're Hibs, you'll be absolutely raging that it was only about 400,000 of a difference that was able to tide him over. But as you said, that was his dream move. If that's his team he's always held out a hope of playing for, he'd be daft not to take it. And as well as that, the step up as well. Like, even if you're not a Celtic fan, if you are a player, knowing that you're going to get at least Champions League, if not European football, you can go and potentially win league titles, trophies are more guaranteed. You'd be daft not to take a move to Celtic or Rangers before anyone says anything in the comments, but it is true though, like the step up, it is massive, and if you are deemed to be worthy of that step up, I don't see anything wrong with taking the opportunity, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, and Gogsy, St Mirren then probably are the victims of their own downfalls. Pretty poor defending, and Curtis Main pounces and gets a goal. He seems to be somebody that they're loving this season, anyways, in Dundee.
Yeah, I mean, Curtis Main's been around for a wee while now. He's been at a few clubs in Scotland, and I think we all know what to expect from him. I think he's a really good player. I mean, when he played for Motherwell, he came from Portsmouth on a free transfer, and I mean, I wouldn't say lit up the league, but he certainly replaced Louis Moult quite well, and then got that move to Aberdeen, and he's obviously been at St Mirren and now Dundee since. and he also had a bit of a holiday in India.
Yeah, of course, yeah, and he lit up the game, lit up a few faces as well. I think with a couple of elbows here and there, and yeah, he was a real tough challenge for defenders, and still is. St Mirren then go back ahead with a lovely finish from Olasunya, and yeah, they seem to really be kind of on a stride, Davey, in this game. It looks like that, you know, they're starting to put a decent performance together. I mean, they're going to have to put it wasn't a disaster, so to speak, but their European woes behind them. You know, they're going to have to lick their wounds and get on with it now, because under Stephen Robinson, they have been strong, and they'll maybe be looking for, you know, another kick on. Can we get top six? Can we push Europe? It's going to be a little bit harder this season, but can they do it again?
I think that's the issue with the likes of themselves and Kilmarnock, is they've set a standard now, and other teams will target them because they're the benchmark. So your teams that finish 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th are all looking to make that step up to 4th, 5th, 3rd. And I think it is a very congested league at that point, especially when it splits. At the end of the top 6, there isn't much of a points difference between 6th and 7th. You always find that it's very tight and someone sort of sneaks in the last day. I think where St Mirren will get joy is their front two. Their front two are good enough for almost any other team in the league, that they really do work well together as a unit, and physically they will cause a lot of teams problems. I think St Mirren's problems, I think, are at the back just now because it's a new goalkeeper. Parts of the back four have been changed as well. So they were a pretty much very well recognised unit last season, and they have lost a lot of players in key positions. And I think their goalkeeper last year was a big part of how much joy they got. And obviously got a new number one this season, and maybe it's just not quite ticked yet. Stephen Robinson knows the league inside and out, and I think you will see them kicking on after the international break, and perhaps the fixtures just haven't been as kind to them, you know, prior to the international break, and certainly with the European fixtures chucked in between. But I think they'll be comfortable top 6 this season.
Okay, well, that's what I was just going to bring that question to you, Gogsy. I was going to go on the back of two things Davey said. The first thing, obviously, a little bit back when he said that obviously Luke McCowan is going to be a big miss for them. I was going to ask you, who needs to step up in this place, or, you know, who is the right kind of culprit in that Dundee squad to go, right, okay, I need to go and be the new Luke McCowan?
I think Lyle Cameron will fit that role quite well. I mean, he's a good industrious player, and he got an assist yesterday for one of the goals. I just think he'll be kicking on now, because, I mean, Luke McCowan leaves a bit of a void, but still, I mean, Dundee United have enough to. Sorry, Dundee FC should have enough to fill that void.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jenna, I'll just take the other question to you then, just to spread it out a little bit. Dundee missed out on European football very, very narrowly at the end of last season, but do you think they'll be looking to not just kind of repeat a top 6 finish, but go on and go for some European football this season?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, previously, it always seemed as though Dundee and Dundee United were kind of the yo-yo teams, constantly in and out of the Premiership, then the Championship. If they can solidify themselves again as a Premiership side, there's no reason why they shouldn't be challenging for Europe if they want to stay in this league. Even again, if they fall short, maybe getting the 6th or 7th, you take it on the chin. Again, it's still quite a good result when you think about their more short-term history in the leagues recently. I think they should be pushing for it, and if they are able to do it, then obviously I would be happy for them. By the end of the day, I'm still hoping it's going to be us. It's been a while since we've been there, and well, I think we could probably match Dundee recently. I don't know if Gogs will agree, but
we'll see. We play them very soon, so I'm not going to comment yet.
Always on the fence. Always on the fence.
We'll move away from that game then, and we'll move north to the most northern team in the Scottish top flight, Ross County. They take on probably their nearest rivals in Aberdeen, who are high-flying at the moment. And although it finishes just 1-0 with a kind of last-minute goal, a lot of action to unpack here, Davey. I mean, first of all, Ross County look like they've gone ahead. They definitely thought they'd gone ahead through Ronan Hale, but a lengthy VAR check and eventually ruled out for offside. Do you think that maybe just took a little bit away from them? Because obviously no team has beaten Aberdeen so far this season domestically, and that's something that Aberdeen will be looking to keep up. Ross County maybe just, a little bit of a blow there and they weren't able to kind of strike whilst the iron was hot?
I think that's the point. When you come off the back of a heavy defeat the week before, the first thing you want to do is get an early goal and get the confidence up. And the longer that spell goes on, the more dangerous it becomes. I think how I would describe this game was a sort of a tale of two goalkeepers in the first half. I think Ross Laidlaw had a really comfortable half and made, some very good saves. But in the second half, Mitov was outstanding. And I think he's been a great buy for Aberdeen. I just want to touch on him for the moment because I said last year when I was on a particular podcast that this was the player to watch for me in the league. And I felt that he could make the step up. And you see the type of player he is. I think he's a leader as well. You see that sort of commanding presence. He inspires his teammates, and that's very rare in a goalkeeper these days. You find goalkeepers that are sort of, good at one thing but not good at everything. But for me, he's kind of all-encompassing. He's comfortable enough with the ball at his feet, but he's very commanding in his own box, and he inspires confidence in his centre halves, and he's a great shot stopper. So he's ticking a lot of boxes there. And I think going forward with Aberdeen tying him on a long-term contract, he is either going to return them hefty profit one day, or he's going to be a modern day legend the longer he stays there, because you can see that in him. And I think Aberdeen, that's been their problem position the last few years after sort of Joe Lewis fell away. But for me, this guy is certainly an outstanding goalkeeper and one of the highlights in the teams outside the Old Firm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll bring that just to you, Jenna. I mean, I was going to touch on it, but Davey's already brought it up. I mean, how important is Mitov? I mean, they got him for under £1 million. I mean, incredible for St. Johnstone last season. Probably the difference between Premiership and Championship football for them, and what a steal that's been for them.
No, definitely. I was really impressed watching the highlights back. He did make quite a lot of good saves as well. I've been watching again some of the highlights just from the other week there as well, just for coming on here, and he has really stuck out. To be honest, I'm kind of annoyed that we didn't think about it. I know we wouldn't be able to afford it, but a player like that, you can't help but be envious when you see him behind the sticks. Don't get me wrong, I love Oxford, but this boy seems to be on a different level.
I'll bring this question to all of you. Lee, with an interesting point here. Davey, I suppose it's probably right to go to you first on this one. He says, what's the panel's thoughts on Aberdeen being the closest challengers to Celtic this season other than Rangers? Aberdeen obviously started brilliantly, 4 wins from 4. Do you think he's got a point there, or maybe a little bit of overreaction after a disappointing result today?
Well, I think in football, momentum is key. And certainly, I can only speak for my team. We can't take anything for granted this season. Aberdeen are 5 points in front of us, along with Celtic. And at the moment, can you see anybody stopping Aberdeen's momentum? I don't know in terms of their fixture list going forward where it pans, but certainly I think they really are a strong challenger for second. I have to be honest and say that. I think their manager will only look to improve their team going forward in January. They've made good profit in the summer as well, so they still have positive resources to go and strengthen that side if and when they need to. And I think the fans are buying into what they do. Look at the reaction when the late winner goes in. Kevin Nisbet as well. That's a terrific signing in terms of the league. Kevin Nisbet knows the league inside and out. He's got that wee chip on his shoulder coming back with something to prove. He's fallen out of favour at Millwall. He's got his international place to play for. So these are all things that are going to work in Aberdeen's favour going forward. So for me, they certainly will be strong challenge for second position at this moment. You can't say otherwise.
Yeah, and Jenna, I'll take the same question to you. Do you think that's I mean, Davey makes some great points there. Do you think that's kind of true? Do you think Aberdeen can push on? Is there a second place up for grabs here, or will we see as the season unfolds, maybe Rangers find their feet a little bit? I mean, it seems to me so far very obvious who's going to be champions, but the talk of a fight for second place, is that realistic?
I don't see why it can't be, to be honest. I would never have guessed at the start of the season, if I'm being honest with yourselves. I really would never have put Aberdeen down as being second chasers. But you know what? As Davey was saying, football is all about momentum, and it will sound daft, but it does just come down to 3 points. If you're going to get 3 points and you get it continuously for about 6, 7, 8, 9 games in a row, you're going to get results like that. People are going to start taking you seriously. If Aberdeen can continue to do this, and what the point, if they are able to get results against the Old Firm, because you're automatically going to assume they're going to take points off them, that will be the real test for them. If they can play against likes of Celtic and Rangers, not just get a draw against them, beat them either home or away, that will be, I think, what will make Aberdeen a potential second place chaser. If they can do that and do it convincingly, I don't see why they can't be in contention for it. However, one bad Old Firm day doesn't mean that Rangers are out of the run. It is still early days. I don't want to hype Aberdeen up too much. To us, I'm back to see a season where it's not Rangers in second, just to see what it does to the rest of the league. But it's that way. I want to say Aberdeen, just because again, it makes the league more attractive as well. Because for too long, it has just been a 2-horse race and everyone else fighting for third. But again, Rangers, you can't write them off either.
Yeah, and Gogsy, it's been a kind of one window rebuild so far under the new manager, and they have lost some key players. I mean, as we touched on already, Mito's been brought in, and that seems to be a massive upgrade on what they had in goals before. But do you think there's a chance for them to challenge? And if they can challenge, are there other teams in the league that could challenge for second place?
Well, I'll say I think they'll just fall short of second. I think there's no other club outside the Old Firm that have a squad that's big enough or good enough to challenge for the top two. And I think that's just how it is in Scottish football, unfortunately. Aberdeen will have their time where they fall short and aren't as good as what they are right now. I mean, that's just how it is every season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I do think Aberdeen they've taken advantage of their good form right now. They've got 4 wins from 4. Brilliant for them. But I do think it may come to a point later on in the season where they are struggling for that form, and it's up to Jimmy Tellin to actually get everything sorted in house and just ride it out when it gets tough. And hopefully for them, they'll have a solid season.
Yeah, okay, and we'll get back to the football then. A strange situation then in the second half. And Biswayan. Okay, thank you. Gogsy is going to be our translator from now on, from Highlander to proper speak. So and yeah, we got Biswayan whips a free kick into the box. It hits the bar, drops down, probably on the line or outside of the goal, anyways. And then Rubišić headers it onto the bar again. There's questions of if it crosses the line. The referee says it does. Points to the halfway line. VAR then says he's offside. I mean, there was plenty of controversy, Davey. First of all, did it actually cross the line?
I'm going to be brutally honest with you here and say I can't answer that honestly. And the reason I say that is because the TV angles and how we provide our coverage to fans in Scotland is not good enough. We have got to have goal line technology. And I'm sorry to bring this up, but in BBC Scotland yesterday, Radio Scotland, we've got the CEO of the league, Neil Doncaster, on promoting saying, "Oh, we can't make the league, 16 teams because it'll affect broadcast rights and whatever." See, if that's the person that's leading the game in the country, that's not good enough for fans. We've got to promote our game better. How do we do it? Well, we've got to at least have 2 to 3 camera angles from each side of the pitch. So if we're using VAR, that everything that is sort of clear and obvious, we've got a definitive answer on it. To make a VAR call when you're not sure, surely the referee's call has to take precedence there, because I don't think you can say with any totality there that is the 100% correct decision. And that's what technology is there for. It's to rule out the debate, and we don't have that in Scotland. It's farcical. And I think we have to promote and make a league better. And these are things that we can do. How much is it going to cost to have cameras set at every ground in the stadium where we have sort of 2 or 3 at each side, so that at least that's, because I think we use sort of these highlight cameras where you've got one long side of the pitch, and you've even seen last season with yourselves, the Motherwell Celtic game, when an offside call, the lines were drawn from one half of the pitch where the offside incident took place. I mean, that just can't continue. We need to address this, I feel, and unless we get a CEO for the league that, promotes change and making the game more modern, then we're all going to be stuck with this laughing stock. And I do subscribe to what Gogsy says. Yeah, Scottish football is great for banter and all the rest of it. But at the same time, we can't be a laughing stock. There's serious prizes at stake. If that decision yesterday was a difference between someone going up or someone coming down, then really that is something that we must address going forward.
You're spot on, David. Honestly, that's the best thing I think I've heard MD say in this podcast so far.
I don't want to turn this into a complete debate about the SFA, about SPFL and the way things are going. But Gogsy, surely we should have had a look at goal line technology before we brought in VAR.
Well, if that's the way that everyone else is doing it, then that's the way we should have followed. But of course, we tend to think that, we're special. We could actually just do it our own way, and look how things have panned out. I mean, we get what we pay for. I mean, we pay for a poor product, and that is why we have so much backlash. Sorry, I need to go off. The dog's doing its dinger, but I'll be back in a minute.
Fine, don't worry about it. I will bring the same question to you then, Jenna. It is, like Davey said, like Gogsy said, it does become then a bit of a laughing stock, and you get people from down south who then go, "Oh, my nan could play in that league." And although we're not kind of screaming out to be known for our football ability or the unbelievable quality of our games, what we do have is unique moments, and that one is unique for all the wrong reasons.
No, definitely. But even then, like as you were saying, like we're not a nation that wants to scream out for football talent and that. That in itself is the problem. We don't want to be known for things like that. Now, fair enough. Like, yeah, we were absolutely woeful at Euros as a nation, right? Fair enough. It happens. Didn't qualify for the last World Cup. But at the end of the day, though, you should be pushing for things like that. Think about it, as you were saying, like people down south, whatever, like, Farmers League, blah, blah, blah. My gran can play in it. Whatever. Old pa used to it, whatever. Move on. But when it comes to things like that, you will know yourselves. No one seems to take a signing from a Scottish team either down south or even abroad seriously until the last couple of years. It's been younger players that have been maybe gone abroad to places like Italy, France, or whatever. That has to stop. People need to actually realise there is talent in this league. And again, I don't want to turn this into a pure tangent or anything, but a lot of people also write it off because of financial gaps between teams. Obviously, don't even need to name them. There are two teams in Scotland that outfinance the rest of us. That's whatever. More like you can argue that all day. I'm not going to make it go there. Don't worry, Davey. But with that, though, that is part of the reason as well. There's just not enough funding. There's not enough funding for the teams outside the Old Firm. And I mean that across all of the leagues. That's not even just a Premiership. All the leagues. We've got this issue with the SFA not investing goal line technology. VAR last season was an absolute farce. That, yeah, fair enough. The Jota goal getting ruled off benefited Motherwell, yeah. So we've probably got cheek to moan about it. But still, if I was a Celtic fan, I'd be moaning and grating about that for months because that was absolutely mental. And I'm trying to watch how I word things like this because normally I would use other words. But honestly, we need to just rip the system to bits and just start over when it comes to refs, VAR, funding, promoting, advertising, broadcast rights. I don't know about you or folk in the chat, but I'd be much happier to tune in every week to a subscription service that showed not even just 16 teams, combine us with the championship, go the full way, give us the 22 teams. Why not? Be ambitious, show properly the different levels of talent that we've got across this country. Because as somebody who watches championship football and has now started covering League One as well, there is some decent games in there and there are some decent teams that people just don't know enough about because they don't have the accessibility to watch these teams. And it goes hand in hand. A lot of people say, Championship League One, no one really wants to watch them. They don't have hardly any fans, blah, blah, blah. Why do you think that is? Because there isn't coverage and a lot of people might not even know some of these teams are here. Turn that for the full league. Lowland League teams, Highland League teams, it's the same argument. If we can get a proper broadcasting deal and some proper funding, I think Scottish football would drastically improve. And to be honest, I can see it happening in a year or two. See, if we actually did these things, the results in a year or two after implementing would be absolutely mental.
And we'll have to have a show on something like that because I think there's more than enough talking points. We'll go back to the football. And Gogsy, I think the dog is okay now, so I'll go to you. There as we touched on, is a brilliant moment from Dimitar Mitov as he saves Ronan Hale's penalty, a second penalty missed by Ross County this season. Different takers. Do they need to try and find someone who can put it away? Or because Ronan Hale has been hitting the back of the net, do they stick with him now and go, do you know what? Let's have a bit of confidence in one of our players.
Maybe they should just train penalties. It's as simple as that. I mean, how they do say how hard can it be to score a goal from 12 yards unchallenged? But then again, it comes down to how good the goalkeeper is at research, like body language reading, all the rest of it. And well, it's not my problem. Like it's up to Ross County to sort out their penalty woes. But yeah, so I've got to say that.
Yeah, fair enough. Swiftly moving on then. A lot of pressure from the Dons finally pays off. As you touched on before, Davey, a bit of patience from the fans, it seemed. And they do get their moment. Kevin Nisbet, the kind of Miovski replacement, the short-term replacement anyways, he gets the goal. A big moment for them and a couple of talking points from it. But just how important was that for them to come away from what looked to be a really difficult tie in the end for them to pick up all 3 points?
Yeah, it's a stuffy fixture, and obviously you asked the question earlier on, do you think they can challenge? Well, when you're trying to challenge for, like, say, second place, these are the types of games that cause you headaches and nightmares when it goes to the sort of 90th minute and beyond. If it ends a draw, you'd probably be disappointed on the balance of play, but getting that victory, despite the level of performance, is all that matters, and it just lifts a huge sigh of relief over the fan base. You've seen the joy. It carries that momentum that we spoke about earlier. And I think, the Aberdeen fans at the moment must be buzzing with everything that's happened at their club. I think Dave Cormack, if he's been honest, has got a few managerial gambles wrong recently, but perhaps this is the one that he's took his time off and got right. As Michael had said in the comments earlier on, they have an identity and a style of play. And I think the sign of a good manager is when you make players better. And we saw last season that Rubizic wasn't really fancied at times. He was a bit sort of hot-headed, shall we say, rash in the tackle. But he looks to come on leaps and bounds just under Thielen's, sorry about the pronunciation of that. I do apologise, Michael. But he does look as if, he's improving players, and that can only benefit them going forward. So, yeah, I think if you're in the Granite City and you're an Aberdeen fan just now, everything is pointing to looking as if it's rosy in the garden.
Absolutely. And we will move on from that game. Ross County back-to-back losses, especially after the hammering at Hampden. It's a bit of a tough one now. I'm not going to ask if there's pressure on Cowie, because you can find out what Peter said in our Ross County view from the stands when we talked about how long they can go without picking up a win. But what I will ask all three of you, I want a short and sweet answer, and I'll extend this to the comments. But we had a little debate in our group. Aberdeen fans do spill on to the pitch at the end and celebrate with the players. Jenna, I'll take it to you first. Is it Tim Pot, or do we just need to stop with the celebration, please?
I was literally just about to say that. I'm not going to sit and give fans a hard time for being happy and ecstatic. To be honest, when we won up at Ross County, the 5-1 game, I'm surprised me and Gogsy won it on the pitch. Never mind the Aberdeen fans. So, I get it. You're full of adrenaline. You're full of emotion. Last minute winner like that. You can argue all day the safety concerns. Fair enough. Obviously, you need to take that consideration, but it's just one of the things in it. As long as they do go hot, it's just a good laugh in it. It doesn't need to be as serious as folk make it to be. As long as there's been no injuries or anything like that, or any fights, I don't see any issue with it.
Yeah, well, it was actually Stu that was arguing the point that it was very Tim Pot. He has jumped in the comments to kind of confirm that for us. But Gogsy, where do you sit on it? Because, should the first thought of a fan as soon as you score be, whoa, wait a second, this is a bit Tim Pot?
No, don't care. Your team's won in the last minute in Dingwall on a Saturday night, and you're probably steaming. Go mental. I don't give a shit. Sorry. But if my team's gone up to Dingwall, like it happened on Boxing Day a few years ago, we were 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go. We came back. We scored in the last minute. Declan Gallagher header, 2-1. I didn't go on the pitch, but a few people did. we went absolutely ballistic, and that's part of football. You've just got to live with it.
Was that not the game? And there was like a French vlogger guy, and he ended up getting kicked out for wearing a picture as well.
Aye, yeah.
That's Dingwall Boxing Day. You will forever be known as the best day in Motherwell's recent history, not just for the Gallagher header, but I think that's just
that's a bit of a stretch, but I see where you're going.
For me anyway. For me.
Right, before we just turn this into a complete and utter Motherwell podcast, Michael, I just want to let you know that I do agree that it is not Tim Pot, and I absolutely, as the same as you, would have been on the pitch if that was my team. Davey, Stu is obviously a Rangers fan. Do you think it's all about perspective, and he's kind of looking at it from, if Rangers are scraping a 1-0 win up there, then it's just pure relief, or do you think he's just wrong?
Well, I don't think my club can comment at the moment in the way that our fans, our players celebrated with the fans against St Johnstone in the Cup a couple of weeks. So that would be sheer hypocrisy from me. However, I do get that, the argument in regards to, safety elements and whether it's Tim Pot or not. But at the end of the day, what I would call out on this is that old firm fans don't get the joy of doing this, and especially in our fixture, because we're so heavily policed. I think as well, while we're on the subject of this, you can't drink alcohol at the games, or it can't be sold because of an old firm fixture in 1980. And, if we're trying to promote our fixture in the game, you can go to a boxing or a darts match in Scotland and have a drink at the game, but we can't do that at football. We have to move with the times, and I subscribe to the fact that it is a modern society now. It's not the football hooligan culture that it was. So perhaps that's something to look at going forward, and maybe a new CEO would introduce that.
And just before I move on from that, Gogsy, just because of what Davey said there, do you think Old Firm fans are a wee bit spoiled in that, in terms of they go, oh, it's only a win, whereas for other teams, 3 points week in, week out isn't expected, and Aberdeen are absolutely flying. But, do you think that's kind of just an Old Firm perspective, that anything that's not good for them kind of ruins everything for them?
Well, success is subjective. Like, it depends where you are in terms of stature. Like, if you're at a naturally successful club with an attitude that you should be winning things, which would be, say, Celtic and Rangers, sometimes even at a stretch with Aberdeen, Hibs and Hearts, because they are the next three biggest teams in the club in the league. We all have different expectations. For example, for me and Jenna, we hope to be in the top six and maybe push for Europe every other year or something like that. And just staying above 10th is probably good enough for us sometimes. But for Rangers and Celtic, I suppose it is a bit spoiled in terms of the experience. You grow up and your team's winning every week. What does that feel like, really? Like winning 3-0 against St Johnstone at home. Yeah, if that happened to my club, I'd be loving it. But sometimes even winning 7-1 against Motherwell isn't good enough, because they've conceded. But yeah.
Well, Eros Gresta scored in that game that you were mentioning, so that one's been.
Yeah, I was there.
In my brain.
Mm-hmm.
We will move on, and Davey, I'm sure you are delighted to hear we will go on to Sunday's games, which started with one of the biggest fixtures in our league, which has maybe been diluted recently, but the Old Firm derby takes place at Celtic Park, the first one of the season, and without jumping into the football too much, a bit of a derby day demolition, as they call it across the road, Davey.
Well, I think there was an expectancy, or certainly an airy expectancy, that from a Rangers fans' point of view, that we weren't expecting too much. It was more rather in hope than expectation. I think the concern from the supporter side of things is the fact that we have seen things happen and have addressed them, whether it's the chat amongst your fellow fans in the pub or on podcasts, patterns they play that we're worried about and that we hope Clement would address. And it doesn't look that he has addressed that. We'll talk with point number one, which is Tav and Dies and Maida. We've known for 4 or 5 games that this is a problem issue for Rangers and Rangers-Celtic games, and Celtic certainly target them and exploit them, and they've got great joy with that. I think another thing that I'm worried about is how slow Rangers have to react from restarts, whether that be, throw-ins or corner kicks. They're very slow in getting back into the shape and getting set. And obviously the first goal comes from that. You see that Rabbi Matondo switches off. The runner drifts off him, the ball comes across, and again, James Tavernier is not aware of where Dyson Maeda is. His movement's just too clever for him. And it's a goal that we have lost the last 4 years at Celtic Park, the very same goal from different sides, whether it be Tav or Barisic. And again, it's just history repeating itself, or recent history repeating itself. How the manager doesn't address that is a massive concern for me, because it is a part in the play. It happens too often. And again, we're just exposed to it. So huge question marks on Clement for that, just to start off.
Yeah, and Jenna, Rangers surprised most by coming out the blocks a little bit faster than Celtic, getting in their face a little bit and kind of dominating the ball for all of 12 minutes. An offside goal for Celtic then seems to set fear in the hearts of every Rangers player, and from there on, they lose every bit of shape. Is this to be blamed on the manager, or do you think that tactics just went out the window and there's a big mentality issue?
Oh, it's a mentality issue, without a doubt. I mean, as David was saying, Maeda's run absolute rings round Tavernier for what feels like years now at this point, just because it has been the last couple of old firms. Rangers haven't turned up, to be honest, today. Again, as you said, they held their form for a grand total of 12 minutes. Well done. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not how you're meant to perform in what is one of the biggest games of your season. Those are the games that define who is potentially going to win the league. And to be honest, it just seems if Rangers aren't interested at all. I hear quite a lot of Rangers things just because boyfriend's a diehard Rangers fan, so I'm always getting it in my ear about how one day they're going to win the league and then the next day they've bottled it and that's it. And he hates them all, they deserve to all get sacked. But honestly, see, after watching it today, you can tell it is just a mentality issue. Brendan Rodgers' Celtic side, they're full of confidence. Is it maybe arrogance? You can argue, maybe. But they have that belief that they're going to turn up and they're going to win. Rangers just don't have that. And to be honest, they feel like that even against like other teams in the league, never mind Celtic. They really need to get an actual realisation of what their club is, what it represents in their history, and actually remind themselves that they are supposed to be one of the biggest clubs in Scotland with some of the biggest successes. So why are they not performing that way?
Yeah, of course. And Gogsy, to try and look at it from the other's perspective, because it's hard to do so with the panel that is ahead of us. But it is maybe a bit of an eye-opener for Celtic in the fact that, they didn't come flying out the blocks, but maybe they expected this because as soon as they did turn up, they turned up in style.
Well, I think they were more assured that I think they knew that they were going to get the result that they got. And I mean, it may be down to the fact that Rangers, the team has an inferiority complex, because when it comes to the big occasion, like even see against Dynamo Kiev, like they don't have much bottle at the moment. And I mean that's a bit rich for me being a Motherwell fan because they've recently beaten us. But I do think that when it comes to the crunch, Rangers just don't have it in them. And I think it's been a long existing pandemic in the club, and probably even since the COVID season in which they actually won the league.
David, I'm not going to ask you to praise Celtic. I think that might be a little bit too far, especially after the day that you've had. But what I will say is it seems to have come in a lot of small margins this game, each and every one of them, which Rangers were edged out of. Is that, just shows how powerful Celtic are, especially when they're bringing on the likes of Engels and McCowan and other signings, which they've spent a decent bit of money on. And, Maeda opens the scoring probably out of nothing, because it comes from a throw-in where each and every Celtic player is man marked by a Rangers player, to Johnson having a lot of space, Maeda having all the time in the world to tuck it under Jack Butland.
Yeah, I mean, I know Jenna and Gogsy were subscribing to the sort of mentality and bottle issues, but it's plain and simple for me. I won't sugarcoat it. It's a lack of quality. There is a huge gap in quality. Celtic have players who are comfortable on the ball. If you listen to Brendan Rodgers after the game, he said he watched what Rangers did in the first 10 minutes. So Dujon Sterling went to press Callum McGregor, and they identified that. So what Callum McGregor did would sidestep where Dujon Sterling was running into the space, and he played through that press, and they picked up different positions, and then you watch them move throughout the pitch. It's seamless. They all know where to be and where to pick up and receive the ball. And I don't think there's that level of instruction there from Rangers to combat that. And Philip Clement didn't have any answers to look to respond to that tactical tweak that Rodgers made. And yes, we probably are short on quality at the moment, but you can do things as a manager to, against quality. I mean, look at Motherwell when they came to Ibrox and won 2-1 last season. They knew to play the ball over the top and stretched us. With Theo Bair and Jack Vale at the time, and Blair Spittle caused us great problems running in behind because they knew the Rangers defence couldn't cope with that, and that's how they got their joy and their victory. So what Rangers could do is they could make themselves more pragmatic and hard to beat and shape up to combat that and not play such a high line, because we have proper playing there at centre half, and John Suter, and both in recovery are not quick at all. James Tavernier is not quick at all. So you've got three of your back four there with a distinct lack of pace, and you're playing a high line on the edge of the D inside your own half. It's suicidal football at times, and a coach for me would look to address that. And there's huge red flags where Philip Clement is concerned that he can't see that, because I'm a fan and I'm noticing that. The guys I speak to are noticing the same things, and he can't identify that. Now, Celtic, as we've always said, are quick from the restart and look to punish teams. Rangers seem to be slow. They've now adapted to zonal marking at set pieces. And you look, Celtic are attacking the spaces and running into those areas and causing us problems. Although it was 3 today, it could have been 4, 5, 6. They just didn't, put the foot on the throttle enough. But the chance was there for them, because that's the worry for me going forward. And as I say, there's many issues to address. And I think the key one right now is the captaincy and the manager, because for me, both are not good enough for this football club.
David, building on that, just out of curiosity from your perspective on things, as obviously a Rangers fan, you were saying that it's not even just a lack of mentality, it's a lack of quality for yourself. What one do you think happened first? Is it a lack of quality has brought on the mentality, or do you feel as though the mentality has caused the lack of quality?
Well, you have to say there was quality there at one point, because regardless of whether you subscribe to the fact it was a COVID season or not, Rangers did win a league title under Steven Gerrard as coach. And when Steven Gerrard left, Rangers were still 4 or 5 points in front at that time. And I think there is massive question marks as to how the board have handled their business from that point. He wasn't gave the funds that perhaps he deserved, and that money has been squandered to managers. I mean, even Giovanni Van Bronckhorst never got a healthy transfer budget in comparison to what Michael Beale has been given. So that is poor board management, but certainly the quality has dwindled. I think where Steven Gerrard's team got success was they had a style of playing, and if somebody fell out that team, somebody filled in that position. It was smooth. Everybody knew their roles and responsibilities. I look at a Philip Clement side. I don't see any roles and responsibilities, and that really worries me as a supporter.
Some more good points there, Davey. Kyogo then goes and double Celtic's lead, as you say. I think it was you, Davey, that said, as soon as they score one, they want to score another. And Gogsy, you made a similar point. It is then Kyogo that makes it 2. I mean, he had a slow start to life in Old Firms. I don't think he got a goal in his first 4, but since then it's been pretty stunning. I think he's 7 in his last 10. Just how important is he to the Celtic side, Gogsy? Not just in any games, but in the big games, because that's a pretty good finish, no matter what you think of Jack Butland's position.
Well, yeah, he gave him the freedom of Parkhead. But, Kyogo is a big game player. And, I mean, it shows that every time there's an Old Firm comes around, he does usually get a goal since his start. And I think he's a very instrumental player. And, I mean, if Celtic didn't have him, I don't think they'd be as successful.
Yeah, I'll take that to you as well, Jenna, because his numbers maybe dropped off a little bit last season. Matt O'Reilly obviously had a spectacular season, but it was a bit of a change from Ange Postecoglou to Brendan Rodgers' style of play. But Brendan said at the start of this season that he was going to be a more important player, that he seemed, maybe a little bit more on board with what he wanted him to do. And figures have been popping up elsewhere. I mean, Dyson Midas had a great start for Celtic this season, but Kyogo back on the score sheet. And as we've seen before, it only takes one moment for him to go and do so.
No, definitely. Kyogo is an absolutely amazing player. There was the rumours going about a couple of weeks back. They were like, he was going to Man City at one point, like things like that. Fair enough, obviously that turned out to be absolute nonsense, but a rumour like that does only start if a player is deemed to be of a high quality. To be honest, I was surprised that Ange didn't look to take him at Spurs with him. I thought that might have been something that tried to happen, even if he didn't get first team football regularly or even on the starting 11. I thought maybe just as a substitute player, even for like cup games, things like that. He is a really amazing player, and to be honest, I think he will get a good move. If he continues the form he's had the past couple of years at Celtic, I can see him going on and doing some really good things.
Fair enough, and we'll touch on the final goal as well. I mean, it comes in the form of a beauty from recently international retired Callum McGregor. Gogsy, I mean, a stunning finish in the end, despite a slight deflection. Just how much does he boss the park in these games? I mean, Davey touched on it there by saying, Brendan Rodgers said that he identified that Callum McGregor was being man-marked, and so they just changed that because, he is what everything goes through at Celtic.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why you got man-marked, because he's such an instrumental player in Celtic's playing style. Like, he dictates the play, and, I mean, without him, I think Celtic would struggle. I mean, he's like the new sort of Scott Brown, if you know what I mean. He's that big a player in the squad that if you take him out, then Celtic struggle. It's like that one little cog that keeps the whole thing turning.
Yeah, absolutely. Davey, I'm just going to stick with you for a couple of questions here because they are very much Rangers related. And I mean, you already touched on the pressure that's on Philippe Clement and from the fans anyways. But first of all, I'll go to you based on the kind of Jack Butland. I mean, we've talked a bit on mentality, but he seemed to have a poor day today, and it's not the first one this season.
No, I think the question with Jack Butland for me is there's a difference to being a goalkeeper and a Rangers goalkeeper. And I think we have us having two Motherwell fans on the night, they'll subscribe to the fact that Andy Gorham was a sensational goalkeeper. And even when he went to Motherwell, still had great success late in his career. He was the type of goalkeeper that could make that save. That save, you need him to make the game, to keep the game at 0-0 or to win you the game 1-0. I don't see that in Jack Butland. I've never seen that in Jack Butland. And for me, that's why he was never the England number one long enough. His career since then, when he made a couple of clangers, descended into obscurity. He was a number 2, number 3 goalkeeper for the vast majority of his prime years of his career following that. And I know Rangers took the gamble, and early on last season, he did start well. But in the games that have mattered for Jack Butland in his Rangers career, you can only really say the League Cup against Aberdeen is the only one that he's ticking a box. For me, in the Old Firm games, he's always had questionable decisions. I do think the Kyogo one at Ibrox last year, the one from long distance, I question his starting position at that point. The 3-3 game at Ibrox, I feel there was 2 in that game, which he was susceptible to. The cup final, he is the man that made the mistake that cost us the cup final. And again, you see today he's made a glaring mistake. So there's huge question marks over his mentality and whether he can handle being a Rangers goalkeeper. For me, I don't see an Andy Gorham, an Alan McGregor, a Stefan Klos in him. I see a Wes Fodering in him, and that is worrying for me.
Yeah, worrying for anyone, I think. I'll just, like I said, I would stick with you. So I will open this question up to you guys in a minute, and this is probably one for the comments as well. But what I would maybe suggest is that obviously we have seen the kind of dilution of the derby in recent times, and a lot of focus has gone on that based on the no away fans, which has continued yet again this season. But I wanted to bring the kind of thought to you that, do you think people are maybe tuning in a little bit less or caring a little bit less because the outcome is pretty predictable at the moment. There seems to be a decent gap between the two.
Well, the problem is that the fans care. It matters to the fans, and despite us being like massive underdogs for today in terms of the bookies odds, I don't believe there's a Rangers fan that goes into an Old Firm game not expecting to win. You do subscribe to the fact that these are the games that matter and we have to win them. The problem is that the players at the club don't buy into that ethos. Certainly not when your captain has represented such a poor return in his leadership as captain in terms of titles and also head-to-heads in this fixture. I think the boardroom and how they act has also played a part in that sort of dilution that you talked about, Alex. They don't get around the table enough to sort the issues, and we can't, shout at anyone at the moment because we haven't got our own house in order. Our stadium hasn't even been ready for the start of the season, so we have to take all the hits on that. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to give back at the moment, we can't. And unless we address the main issues that we are suffering from at the club, we'll continue to be, laughed at for the foreseeable, unfortunately.
Yeah, some good points in there, David. Some stuff I can't really argue with. Jenna, I'll bring it to you as well, though. How I'm more likely to tune into a game of two sides that I think, this could be a good game. This could be a close game. I mean, people now probably going Celtic Rangers. Well, I already know who's won that one.
To be honest, I do have to agree with you. I'm more likely to turn it into something, if it was on the TV anyway, Aberdeen, Ross County, the Hibs game, things like that, because going into today, I said it all week long, Celtic was going to stroll it. You're playing them at Parkhead or Celtic, whatever you want to call it. No away fans at all. And even then, if they were in, it was meant to be reduced capacity. The whole thing is just a farce. I don't get it. I don't know if it's just maybe ignorance from being a Mallow fan or not here, but the whole thing about not letting fans in, it's just childish at this point. I'm not going to blame the finger at Rangers or Celtic for whoever caused that. Just grow up and get it sorted, honestly, for everyone's sakes. Like, and as well as the quality, it kind of goes back to what I was saying as well, like the whole mentality issue. Like, it's as if the Rangers players have forgot what club it is that they actually play for. They turn up at those games and it's as if they're treating it as like a training session. Like, they just don't seem to, not that they don't care, obviously they'll care. They just don't have that oomph about them. It's probably the most weakest way to describe it. That's just in plain terms what it's like. They go there, they get in the 12 minutes of success, if you want to call it that, and then they ball it. It's just not interesting anymore. Like, I don't have a foot in the race, right? Again, here with this one. Clearly I don't. But you still usually tune in Old Firm Day just to see, right? We'll see who maybe gets in tap to see how it changes up the league table a wee bit. But honestly, Celtic's going to stroll it this year. Would not be surprised if they did a double or treble again, because Rangers, they've just not got it in them at all. They forgot what their club actually stands for. I mean, as Davey was saying, there's the issues with the stadium, having to play at Hampden in the first place. Fair enough, if they had supply issues that are out with their control, it's not fully their fault. But surely things like that must have been taken into consideration before planning must have started. You'd think, surely. It's probably hypocritical. I mean, Gogs will back me up here. We've had a lot of like behind the scenes issues with the way our club has been run recently. Look at the whole investment thing with the guys from abroad, right? But it's just, I don't know what's going on at Rangers, but I feel bad for their fans because it just seems as if things behind the scenes are just falling to absolute pieces. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's maybe impacting Clement in some of the decisions he's making. It's kind of like the argument from Man United last season, like, well, the issues like they were having behind the scenes, is that was impacting results, things like that. You can argue all day, we'll never know, but I wouldn't be surprised.
And Gotsy, I'll slightly alter the question to you. But what I'm going to ask you is, do you think the damage done to the Old Firm has further damaged the reputation of Scottish football? Because it is undoubtedly outside of Scotland seen as the biggest game.
Well, I think the focus has changed. I mean, the focus of the Old Firm used to be about the two teams playing, but now it's all about how many fans are going to be let in from the away side. I'm not interested in that. I actually care about the football that's been played in the park. Like, if the media is going to digress from actually what's happening on the pitch, then that's where we're going wrong. because we should be glorifying this fixture as the centrepiece fixture of the league because it's the so-called biggest game of the season. And the fact that we're all basically having a punt at, how many people are actually going to go as an away fan, it's just, for me, it's tiresome. Like, I actually can't be bothered with it. Like, we always hear about Rangers and Celtic anyway because we're in Scotland, and it's so solely focused on Rangers and Celtic. And then when Celtic and Rangers play against each other 4 or 5 times a season, it always comes to the fact that how many away fans is going to be allowed this time? And I lose interest. Like, I watch the game, fair enough, but it just gets so boring and repetitive, hearing the same shit all over and over again. Things need to change. And again, I think things would be different under a different CEO.
You're right, Gogsy, because to be honest, it does just seem as if the fan politics of the old firm just dominates the games more than ever.
No wonder people are looking elsewhere to do what to do on their Saturday or Sunday, because things aren't interesting anymore.
No, I didn't even watch Old Firm today for that very reason. I'm just not interested in it anymore. Like, I watched the highlights to come on here so I knew roughly what I'd be talking about, but I don't know about the rest of these, but it's just not the same anymore.
Yeah, well, I wish I didn't have to watch today's Old Firm. But anyways, we will move on. You'll be happy to hear, Davey, a couple of other games today. And Hearts took on Dundee United at Tynecastle. Hearts, who have really struggled to the start of this season, which I'm sure there'll be a couple of Hibs fans happy to hear. Shankland returned today after his injury. He missed out in Europe, but he's not really looked the same, has he, Jenna, since, he's definitely not picked up the form that he had last season. Do you think that's to do with the kind of links away and he's only got a year left in his contract, or do you just think, there's some other issues at Hearts?
Every chain runs out of steam. Players fall in and out of form. To be honest, if we're talking about Shankland specifically, it could just be a case of that. He had a good run. He ran out of steam a bit. Same thing, you could an all different type of player, but Liam Kelly is a good example of that. Great couple of seasons with us, and then ran out of steam, became stale, and was just not the player he used to be. That's what I kind of feel as though has happened with Shankland. Yeah, maybe it's been the rumours of him getting linked with Rangers and other teams. It's maybe gotten in his head, but you can't use that as an excuse because, put it in a more simple terms as for us as civilians. Yeah, you might be looking at other job prospects for yourself if you want to leave your company. At the end of the day, you still need to turn up and do your 9 to 5 and do it well. You can't put in a half-hour shift, to put it bluntly, and get away with it. There's no excuse for Shankland to not be turning up. He needs to try to get his head clear. To be honest, Hearts have been absolutely shocking this season. I did not expect them to tank in this level of quality, especially this soon. Everyone kind of puts the foot off the gas and has a bad run at some point in the season. I didn't think Hearts were going to do it now. It does make things kind of interesting again as a neutral when it comes to Hearts issues. But at the same time, though, it's like, kind of what I said about Rangers, it's if they don't actually realize who they're playing for. They're playing for a team that was competing in Europe, meant to be challenging for third place, and Aberdeen's completely blown them out of the water. They need to realise fast that they can't keep up like this. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Naismith's not in a job by Christmas.
Well, I was going to take that. Sorry, go on, Goxie.
I genuinely think if things don't pick up in the next couple of weeks, Naismith will be gone by October.
Oh, yeah. He'll be spending his Halloween at the job centre.
I was going to take that point to you, Davey. I'm sure that there's maybe a bit of a smile on your face to take away from the fact that we're not the only shambles at the moment. But what I will take to you instead is Hearts were probably, for most people, before the season kicked off, the favourites to come and finish third again. Aberdeen, the expected challengers then. It looks so far from that from them so far.
Absolutely. I think Hearts fans were lured into that false dawn because they played us first game of the season and we managed to make them look good. And everybody's been fooled by that. But I think I'm always wary of when teams give managers an extension to their contract in the first couple of weeks of the season, because that's almost a poison chalice in terms of it just sets the tone wrong for the team. because it's sort of out of nowhere. And I don't think that Naismith has done enough to prove himself as a manager yet, because technically he'll run the argument that he took over midway through last season, but ultimately everybody knows that due to that issue with the pro license, Frankie McAvoy was just sort of shadowing Naismith last season for the first sort of 3-4 months, and then he officially took over. I don't think Hearts play good football. They're not easy on the eye. He tinkers too much with the team and the shape. He brings guys in. You might see Cammy Devlin come in for a couple of games, then he'll drift out. I don't think he's the back four. I mean, against Dundee, they switched to a back three and get absolutely hammered. For me, I always thought that Xander Clark was the number one. Yes, he's made one mistake this season with a goal to lose his position to Craig Gordon at the age of 42, 41, 42, coming on 43. Can you really play at top level football? Because I think you've seen that with the goal today. It was such a poor goal that they lost. 2 or 3 passes, they're cut open inside. Nobody goes to shut the ball down, and Craig Gordon doesn't even react. It's almost passed into the net. And I just feel when you get to that age as a goalkeeper, you've hit a sell-by date. I think there was a reason that he wasn't taken to the Euros. So I don't know why Hearts are regressing and going back to yesteryear. I thought that the momentum had shifted and they were moving on with Xander Clark going forward. I thought he had a great second half to the season with Hearts last year. So why they changed that, for me, I really don't know. I know he was struggling with an injury, but surely if he's a number one, if it goes to next week or after the international break and they chop and change the team again, I think Hearts fans will be tearing their hair out, because I don't see any sense of direction under Naismith, no identity in terms of style of play. It's all chop, change, and the Tinkerman, much like Claudio Ranieri. And when you adopt that sort of philosophy as a manager, the writing can be on the wall very, very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gogsy, I'll bring this to you. Hearts, for most people, seem to have a pretty strong window in the fact that they kept Lawrence Shanklin, but also they added both quality and quantity. It looks like 2 of the big ones being Jan Danda from Ross County and, of course, Blair Spittle from your own Motherwell. They've maybe not been utilised to the standards that they were expected. And do you think that puts extra pressure on Naismith? Because it's not like he's not been backed.
I think it's may sound a bit left field here, but I think it's because Hearts have signed too many players of a similar quality and not enough players to improve their starting 11. And I mean, Jan Danda is a great player, but is he any much better than George Grant? Or I think he's the same sort of standard as Blair Spittle is, because they were both the sort of creative outlet for both their respective clubs last season. And I think when I saw Blair Spittle at Fir Park last week or the week before, he was too deep. Like, he was almost playing as a sort of a number 6 position instead of a number 10 or a number 8, and like he wasn't very effective at all. Like, he was basically marked out the game. And the same with Jan Danda. They were both very quiet. And it's these types of players, like you can't play them in the same team because they're too similar and they try and do the same thing, and they're both very readable. So I think what Hearts have done is probably not signing enough players of a better standard and signing too many players of the same standard.
Fair enough. Yeah, some good points in there, definitely. We'll try and look on the flip side here, Jenna. It's obviously a very important result for Jim Goodwin and Dundee United, because they were another team who were expected to be, down there and probably fighting to stay up. Some Dundee United fans maybe not happy that Jim Goodwin was even put in the role in the first place, but probably 3 points that they didn't expect to have anyways coming away from Tynecastle.
No, definitely. The whole Jim Goodwin thing at United seems a bit of a weird one at times. Like, it seems as though the fans love him or they're calling for his head. I mean, I get it. Sometimes we're the same with Kettlewell. Other weeks he's our Lord and Saviour. Other weeks we're getting ready to put a stake through his heart. It's just one of those things. But it is a really good result for them. A weird thing I've noticed, though, is the benching of Louis Moult for Dundee United. He was so important last season, and now he doesn't get a lack of game time. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't know the boy's name, so I'm not even going to attempt to try and pronounce it. But
Shapanovsky.
Thank you. I instantly knew it was going to be. But, like, that young boy's came in, and he has been absolutely brilliant. But it just seems to be, like, they seem so different from last season. I think that's what's kind of caught a lot of people off guard, is they were expecting to see Championship United up, and it seems as though they have made the changes, and I wouldn't be surprised if they end up kind of changing expectations and maybe finish about 7th or 8th.
That is absolutely a Motherwell fan in you talking about Louis Moult. Right,
I
we
can't
shall
help
move
it.
on.
Propaganda never stops, Alex. You know this by now.
We shall move on to the final game. It kicked off at the same time as Hearts versus Dundee United. Their rivals Hearts were away to Kilmarnock. Hibs in search of their first win, as were Kilmarnock. Neither got it in the end. It was a point apiece, but it took a late equaliser from Bruce Anderson from the penalty spot for Kilmarnock. Pressure, Gogsy, is there any pressure on Derek McInnes? I mean, some European ties in there, but they in the end, they miss out on Europe to a good team in Copenhagen, but they're not really doing a lot. I think they sit bottom of the table, so there's a lot of pressure on them. Is there pressure on Derek McInnes, though?
I would say Derek McInnes still has a little bit of credit because of like how well that he did last season, but it's going to wear thin because, well, I mean, they no longer have Europe as a sort of ally to rest on if they've got any bad results coming up. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they work through the international break coming up. And I would say Hibs also are in the same sort of boat. I mean, obviously Hibs didn't have Europe, but they're both probably at a point where they don't know how to win a domestic game, and that's an issue that they both have to address very soon.
Yeah, Davy, Hibs double their point tally for the season today with the draw. Should there be some questions asked about David Gray? Because at the start of the window, there seemed to be a lot of excitement, especially with, obviously the investment at Hibs, and there was big talks, big promises that they were going to be adding a lot of quality. It was all about getting in the right people, not just lots of people, and it seems to be all against that. I mean, you're probably going to say you're all used to these kind of promises not being fulfilled, but do you think Hibs fans will be right to feel aggrieved at their kind of status at this time?
Well, I'm sure Hibs fans see themselves as, one of the big 4 or 5 clubs in Scotland in the top league. And rightly, they've got the fan base that, they should be subscribing to that. But if you look at the appointment of David Gray, I'm always wary when someone's had 2 or 3 cracks at it as interim manager before they then get given the job. It's almost like you're a last resort. And I kind of think the fact that Malky Mackay went there, it's just going to be a slow process until he ends up being their manager. I think everyone in Scottish football wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being, the biggest unkept secret when it eventually happens. For it to be your first job as a manager, I think it's a stick that's going to be used to beat you with, and I feel sorry for David Gray in regards to that. However, he obviously has something about him, and I will say if results pick up, you've seen the goal with Joe Newell today. It was worked on in the training ground. It was a great bit of play, a corner kick routine where he takes the ball to the corner flag, takes a corner, plays one step inside, then takes it almost in the same stride that he's running in and pings it in the top corner. It's a quality goal. They have worked on that. So if that is something that he has been working on in the training ground, maybe we will see them develop after the international break. But if he continues to not do well in derby fixtures, if they don't progress up the table, say by January they're not in the top 6, watch this space for Malky Mackay taking over.
Good to bounce back to you, Davey, on that one. Obviously, it comes in the form of a very late equaliser, but Kilmarnock do get their goal. Is this a case of, them being able to, because they've had a couple of last-minute goals, Europe included. Is this a case of them going, let's just fight to the very end for this, or is it Hibs not fighting to the very end and giving up an easy goal, a goal that they really didn't need to give up?
I think for me, Derek McInnes sides do have that sort of combativeness about them. I think playing on the plastic pitch sometimes makes you have to, make that your philosophy by default. I do think Kilmarnock might suffer from sort of second season syndrome. I mean, I know this is their 3rd season back in the top league, but with last season's success, that is now the benchmark that they'll be judged against. So Derek McInnes is going to have to at least match that, or Kilmarnock fans will see that as a failure. And they were handed tough European fixtures, but I don't think there's harmony in the squad. You see that Danny Armstrong was kind of floating about the idea of a move and things because, he did well last season, but he never got his move this summer. So is things maybe just going to get a bit stale at Kilmarnock? And I haven't seen enough transfer business for them to refresh it. They do have a way of playing. Yes, they have been hampered by injuries, but I don't think their goalkeeper this year. Obviously, they've tried O'Hara, they've tried McCrory. It hasn't worked. And last season, they had Will Dennis, and Will Dennis saved them so many points last season. It was a major part of how they've played. I think there's been a significant drop-off in that department for them, and that's why they've conceded so many goals.
Absolutely. And with that, we've talked on all of the games. I mean, thank you very much to the 286 people who are currently tuned in. But I will just bring it to one final point. Everyone can relax for a couple of weeks. It's time to watch Scotland. Gogsy, Jenna, Davey. Gogsy, I'll start with you. How hopeful are you for the upcoming Scotland games? Can we get anything here?
I think we can get 3 points. I think if we can make the most of the hand and roar, then I think we can be all right. I don't think we'll get anything off of Portugal, but I think the goal here is to probably get 5 or 6 points out of the group, because I think that'll be enough to keep us third place anyway and be seeded as pot 1 for the World Cup qualifying draw.
Jenna, is it a chance to be excited about Scotland, or is it just a nice break from club football?
I mean, saying the word relaxing in Scotland in the same sentence, it just feels wrong. You know what? My blood pressure's through the roof. Being a Mallow fan, I'll be a Scotland fan on top of it. I embrace the chaos at this point. If we get 5 or 6 points, like Gogsy was saying, brilliant. If not, again, we're playing like Portugal, Poland, really, really great teams. We can take what we can get. Again, if we utilise the ham the roars Gogsy was saying as well, we might do well, but I'm just trying to take it one game at a time when it comes to Scotland. I try not to think too much of it.
And also, I must add, I think when the pressure is off us, because there is no pressure on us to do well in this group because every other nation has more pedigree, etc. I think we will thrive on that. And I think making the most of the games at home is a definite. I think we might even sneak a point away at Croatia or Poland.
Absolutely. And Davey, I think I know your answer already, but is it a nice time to, take a step back from club football?
I suppose it is nice to get that wee refresh. I always think the international weeks, though, come too early in the season. You almost want your season up and running. And I think over September, October, you get that stop-start right through to November. And it just, sometimes you enjoy it, sometimes you don't. I think in terms of Scotland, though, what I am worried about is that I hope that Steve Clarke looks to refresh the team, and by that I mean the formation. He's got to advance it from 3-5-2 and everyone knowing how Scotland's going to play. You have to bring in that element of surprise, and there's players in that team that are comfortable getting on the ball and getting on the ball high up the pitch and causing teams problems. You look at the likes of Gilmore, McTominay, they're all better higher up the pitch. So you would hope that Clarke would maybe take that on board going forward. However, I'm not expecting much change in that department.
And that's all for tonight's roundup. On a week where Oasis announced their reunion tour, it was Celtic who felt half the world away from Rangers. The lack of Murrayfield tickets wasn't the biggest disappointment in Edinburgh, and Aberdeen's master plan continues to reap its rewards. Little by little, the league is taking shape. Good night.